Today, we uncover the shocking truth about UK meat pies. The British meat pie, that cornerstone of comfort food, that reliable lunch that your grandfather swore by, has been quietly gutted from the inside out. What you're buying today isn't what you remember. Major brands have undergone recipe changes so drastic that customers report their own dogs hesitating before eating them. Factory workers who've seen what goes into these pies refuse to eat mass-produced versions anymore. One pie that's marketed as containing steak was found to have human hair derivatives in its flour treatment agents. Another cheese pie contains just 6% actual cheese. 6%. In what world does that qualify as a cheese pie? The meat percentages have plummeted so dramatically that one popular brand now puts more potato than beef in their so-called meat pie. Water appears 3 times in ingredient lists before any actual meat shows up. Heritage brands that stood for quality for over 170 years have been bought out by corporate food groups and transformed into what one customer described as revolting farm slurry in pastry. These aren't gradual declines, these are deliberate, calculated recipe changes that happened almost overnight, leaving loyal customers confused and betrayed when the pie they've trusted for decades suddenly tastes like gristle and chemicals. The golden age of British meat pies is over, replaced by an era of palm oil, modified starches, and meat percentages so low they'd be laughable if they weren't being sold to unsuspecting families who still believe they're buying the same product their parents did. So we've gone through the major brands currently sold in UK supermarkets, and we'll expose the 9 meat pie products you need to avoid at all costs. Then I'll tell you the 3 which are actually still worth buying. But before we dive in, I need you to do something crucial. Hit that like button and, more importantly, click the hype button right now. This isn't just about having a preference for one pie over another. This is about holding these corporations accountable for what they're putting into our food. Every hype click sends a message that we're paying attention, that we're not going to silently accept these downgrades in quality while they pocket the savings. The more people who see this video, the more pressure these companies feel to actually put real ingredients back in their pies instead of engineering them in laboratories with modified starches and flavor enhancers. You clicking that hype button is you saying you've had enough of being treated like you won't notice when they replace beef with water and gristle. So do it now. Let's make some noise that these food giants can't ignore. Number 9. Frey Bentos steak and kidney pie. This tinned pie represents everything wrong with modern British food manufacturing. Frey Bentos used to mean something. Back in the 1960s and 70s, these pies were lovely. They had big pieces of actual meat. The tins were heavy because they were full of genuine ingredients. Factory workers from that era have spoken about how the pies were made with meat from local butchers. No additives, no shortcuts, just proper food. Then the bean counters took over. The recipe was gutted, and now the pie contains just 23% meat in total. That's 12% beef and 11% kidney. Less than a quarter of the pie is actually meat. Everything else is water, gravy made from palm oil and modified starch, and a collection of emulsifiers and flavorings designed to make you think you're eating something your grandmother would recognize. Water appears 3 times in the ingredient list, 3 times, before you even get to the meat. That tells you everything about what this pie really is. It's water and gravy, with some token meat thrown in so they can legally call it a steak and kidney pie. The company even apologized in 2018 for cutting quality, admitting that they'd reduced standards to save money. But the damage was already done. Customers who'd been loyal to Frey Bentos for decades had already figured out that something was very wrong. One customer bought a tin recently and found just 2 pieces of meat. The rest was gravy. Another said even their dogs hesitated to eat it, which is remarkable considering dogs will happily eat things they find in bins. When an animal known for its indiscriminate appetite looks at your pie with suspicion, you've created something truly terrible. The Tesco listing for this pie has a rating of 2.4 stars. That's catastrophic. And yet Frey Bentos keeps producing them because enough people still buy them out of habit or nostalgia not realizing that the pie they remember from childhood no longer exists. There's even a dark chapter in Frey Bentos' history that most people don't know about. In 1964, a typhoid outbreak linked to Frey Bentos products killed 3 people. The brand survived that scandal, rebuilt trust, and became beloved again. Now they've destroyed that trust all on their own, not through contamination, but through deliberate recipe degradation in pursuit of profit. This is the number one pie to avoid because it represents the complete betrayal of everything a British meat pie should be. Number 8. Holland's steak pie. Holland's is a British institution. The company was founded in 1851. That's 170 years of pie-making heritage. Generations of British families grew up eating Holland's pies. They were a staple, a reliable lunch, something you could trust. Then Two Sisters Food Group bought the company, and everything fell apart. Customers who remember Holland's pies from 30 years ago, when Northern Foods still owned them, described them as lovely. Genuinely good pies with proper ingredients and decent meat content. Now, they're described as disgusting, as total crap, as horrible, depressing, and gooey. Multiple customers say they wouldn't feed them to a dog. One person took a single bite and threw the entire pie in the bin. These aren't isolated complaints from people having a bad day. This is a consistent pattern of customers who trusted this brand for decades feeling completely betrayed by what it's become. The steak pie contains just 23% beef. The rest is water, flour, palm oil, and a collection of thickeners, stabilizers, and flavorings designed to make this engineered product resemble an actual meat pie. The pastry is made with vegetable oils instead of butter or lard, giving it that characteristic industrial texture that's neither flaky nor satisfying. The filling has no flavor. Customers report that there's no taste of beef, no richness, no depth. It's just bland, gooey, and deeply disappointing. This is what happens when a heritage brand gets absorbed into a massive corporate food group that views pies as units to be produced as cheaply as possible, rather than food to be proud of. Two Sisters Food Group looked at Holland's 170-year legacy and decided it was worth sacrificing for slightly better profit margins. The result is a pie so bad that loyal customers who stuck with the brand through decades won't touch it anymore. That's not just a quality decline, that's corporate vandalism of a beloved British brand. Number 7. Pukka All-Steak Pie. They've got some cheek to call it that. Pukka loves to market itself as Britain's #1 pie brand. They plaster that claim all over their packaging and advertising. What they don't advertise is that their all-steak pie contains only 28% beef, or that it's loaded with monosodium glutamate, or that a single pie contains 2.25 grams of salt, which is 38% of your entire recommended daily salt intake in one pie. Let that sink in. Eat this pie for lunch, and you've consumed more than a third of the salt you're supposed to have in an entire day. Why does a steak pie need MSG? If the beef is good quality and the gravy is properly made, the flavor should come from the ingredients themselves, not from a chemical flavor enhancer. But Pukka doesn't use good quality beef. They use cheaper cuts, bulk the filling out with gravy and thickeners, then add MSG to make your brain think it tastes better than it actually does. That's food engineering, not cooking. The pastry isn't even made with butter. It's made with margarine-containing palm and rapeseed fats and oils. Customers who've been eating Pukka pies for years report that the quality went downhill around 6 or 7 years ago. Before that, these pies were decent. Then something changed. The filling became water-soaked. The beef became mostly gristle. Some customers have even found foreign objects in their pies, including an orange thread that clearly came from factory workers' clothing. The seasoning has been ramped up to the point where you can't actually taste the meat anymore. One customer said, "There's too much pepper now, overwhelming everything else." Another described the filling as lots of cheap pastry and one piece of off-cut meat. Pukka pies used to be a reliable choice. Now they're a masterclass in how to destroy a brand's reputation by prioritizing cost savings over quality while still charging premium prices. Number 6. Ginsters meat pies. If there's one brand that represents the utter betrayal of customer trust, it's Ginsters. These pies used to be decent. Customers who've been eating them for years remember when they actually tasted good. Then something changed. The recipe was reformulated, and seemingly overnight, the meat quality collapsed. Multiple customers have reported the exact same experience. They bought a Ginsters pie expecting the familiar taste they'd enjoyed for years, bit into it, and found gristle. Not just a bit of gristle that you'd forgive in any meat product. Gristle throughout the entire pie. One customer described it as meat that had turned into gristle, as if the company had fundamentally changed what they were putting into these pies. Another customer said they wouldn't feed a Ginsters pie to a pig. Think about that. A food product so low in quality that it's considered unsuitable even for animal consumption. The phrase, revolting farm slurry and pastry, has been used to describe these pies. That's not hyperbole from someone being dramatic online. That's a genuine customer reaction to biting into what they expected to be a decent meat pie. Ginsters clearly made a business decision at some point to reduce costs by downgrading their meat quality. Maybe they switched suppliers. Maybe they started using cheaper cuts and offcuts that previous recipes wouldn't have included. Whatever the reason, the result is a pie that tastes fundamentally different and worse than it used to. And the company hasn't been transparent about this change. They haven't announced a new recipe. They've just quietly swapped out better ingredients for cheaper ones and hoped customers wouldn't notice or complain too loudly. Well, customers have noticed, and they're furious. Being Cornish, one customer said, "Wouldn't feed a Ginsters to a pig." When your own regional customer base turns on you that hard, you've comprehensively destroyed your reputation. Number 5. Greggs Steak Bakes. Greggs has somehow convinced the British public that their products are good. Walk into any Greggs on a weekday lunchtime and you'll see queues of people buying steak bakes, sausage rolls, and pasties like Greggs is doing them a favor. The marketing has been incredibly effective. Greggs is seen as affordable, convenient, and quintessentially British. But peel back the branding, and what do you actually get? According to multiple customers, you get greasy crap. That's not an exaggeration. That's the actual description from someone who's eaten their steak bakes. The pastry is laden with fat, giving it that greasy mouthfeel that lingers long after you've finished eating. The filling is heavily seasoned to mask the fact that the meat quality is not great. The gravy is thick and gelatinous, designed to hold everything together rather than add genuine flavor. Greggs operates on volume. They need to produce thousands of bakes every single day at a price point that keeps customers coming back. That means cutting costs wherever possible, and the easiest place to cut costs is ingredient quality. They're not using premium beef. They're using cheaper cuts, bulked out with gravy and thickeners, wrapped in pastry made with cheap fats, and sold to people who've been convinced by clever marketing that Greggs represents good value. But value isn't just about price. It's about what you're actually getting for that price. And what you're getting is a steak bake that prioritizes shelf life, cost efficiency, and consistent factory production over flavor, nutrition, and quality ingredients. Greggs has become so ubiquitous that people don't even question it anymore. They just accept that this is what a steak bake should taste like. It shouldn't. Number 4. Tesco's Standard Steak Pie. Here's where things get properly disturbing. Tesco's Standard Range Steak Pie contains L-cysteine as a flour treatment agent. Now, you might be wondering what L-cysteine is. It's an amino acid used to condition dough and improve texture. That sounds harmless enough until you learn where L-cysteine often comes from. It's commonly derived from human hair or duck feathers. Yes, you read that correctly. Human hair or duck feathers. That's what's been added to the flour in your steak pie. Now, the L-cysteine itself has been processed and refined, so you're not eating actual hair or feathers. But the fact remains that this ingredient, which has no business being in a traditional meat pie recipe, is there purely because industrial food production demands it. Mass-produced pastry needs these kinds of treatment agents to behave consistently on factory production lines. Your grandmother didn't need L-cysteine when she made pastry. She needed flour, fat, and water. But Tesco can't make thousands of pies an hour with simple ingredients. They need chemistry. Beyond the disturbing hair-derived flour treatment, this pie contains only 28% beef. The rest is water, palm oil, pea protein as a filler, and yeast extract for flavoring. The beef content is terrible. The pastry is made with industrial shortcuts. And customers have described these pies as awful, with many saying they've switched to either making their own or paying extra for M&S versions just to avoid this nonsense. When even Tesco's own customers are abandoning their standard range because the quality is so poor, that should tell you everything. Number 3. Iceland meat and potato pie. Let's talk about a pie that has more potato than meat. This Iceland offering contains 8% beef. Meanwhile, it contains 14% potato. You read that correctly. There is more potato in this meat pie than there is meat. At what point does calling this a meat and potato pie become false advertising? If the potato outweighs the meat, shouldn't it be called a potato and meat pie? But that wouldn't sell as well, would it? Customers expect meat to be the primary ingredient in a meat pie. So Iceland puts meat first on the label while quietly loading the filling with cheaper potatoes, then bulk it all out with gravy made from hydrogenated oils and thickening agents. They even add carotene coloring to make the whole thing look more appetizing than it actually is. This is ingredient manipulation designed to maximize profit while minimizing the most expensive component, which is actual meat. The beef that is in there is low quality, likely trimmings and offcuts rather than proper stewing steak. Iceland knows their customer base is price sensitive, shopping for value and convenience. So they've engineered a pie that hits a low price point by simply not putting much meat in it. And they get away with it because most people don't read the ingredient percentages on the back of the package. They see meat and potato pie, assume it's a decent ratio, and only realize they've been sold mostly potato and gravy after they've already eaten it. Number 2. Bird's eye chicken pies. Here's a fun game. Open up one of these chicken pies and try to find the chicken. Good luck. What you'll find instead is mostly peas and carrots, with tiny bits of chicken scattered throughout, like they're rationing it during wartime. This is the filling strategy for a pie that has chicken in its name. Vegetables are cheaper than chicken. So Bird's Eye has apparently decided that if they load up these pies with enough peas and carrots, maybe people won't notice that the actual chicken content is pathetic. But people do notice. Customers have reported exactly this issue, complaining that what should be a chicken pie is actually a vegetable pie with chicken as an afterthought. The meat that is in there isn't quality chicken breast either. It's processed chicken pieces, the kind that could be made from mechanically recovered meat, all held together with binding agents and flavorings to make it taste like something your grandmother might have made. Except your grandmother would have been mortified to serve a pie this light on actual chicken. Bird's Eye has a massive marketing presence and brand recognition built over decades. They use that trust to sell you pies that simply don't deliver on their basic promise. When you buy a chicken pie, you're buying it for chicken, not for a handful of frozen mixed vegetables with chicken as a garnish. This is corporate food manufacturing at its most cynical. Number 1. Holland's cheese and onion pie. This pie contains 6% cheese. 6%. Think about that for a moment. If you buy a pie specifically because it says cheese and onion on the label, you'd reasonably expect cheese to be a primary ingredient, wouldn't you? But no, 94% of this pie is not cheese. It's mostly pastry, onion, and whatever binding agents and oils they've thrown in to make it resemble food. The pastry itself is awful, described by customers as depressing and gooey. This isn't just one product failing. This is emblematic of what Holland's has become as a whole. Customers who remember these pies from 30 years ago, when Northern Foods owned them, described them as lovely. Then Two Sisters Food Group took over and everything changed. The quality collapsed, the recipes were reformulated, and now you get pies that people describe as total crap and disgusting, with multiple customers saying they wouldn't feed them to their dogs. One person bought this cheese and onion pie, took one bite, and threw the entire thing in the bin. That's not pickiness. That's a pie so bad, it's actually inedible to someone who specifically went out and bought it hoping for a decent meal. When a heritage British pie brand falls this far, it tells you everything you need to know about what happens when corporate food groups prioritize profit margins over the recipes that built customer loyalty over generations. So how do you actually find a decent meat pie anymore? The truth is, most supermarket pies are going to disappoint you if you're looking for anything close to what pies used to be. Your best bet is finding a proper butcher who makes their own. Brands like Thorner's, Denbydale, Taylor's Ainsworth pork pies in Llandudno, Wetherall's pork pies in Sheffield. These are the kinds of local producers who still care about ingredients. But if you're stuck shopping in supermarkets and need something convenient, there are three options that rise above the absolute wasteland we've just walked through. First, M&S Steak and Ale Pie. This pie contains about 40% beef, which is nearly double what you get from most of the brands we've just discussed. That's not an accident. M&S has positioned itself as the premium supermarket option, and for once they're actually delivering on that promise. The ingredients read like someone actually cooked this pie rather than engineered it in a lab. You get British beef, ale, proper seasoning, and pastry made with real butter. Customers who've switched from Tesco's awful standard pies to M&S report that the difference is night and day. Yes, you pay more, but you're paying for actual beef content and ingredient quality rather than water and modified starch. One customer specifically said they now make their own pies or buy M&S as a treat, which tells you that M&S is being held to the same standard as homemade. That's the level you should expect from a shop-bought pie. M&S proves that supermarkets can produce decent pies when they choose to prioritize quality over ruthless cost-cutting. The fact that most other supermarkets choose not to should make you very angry. Second, Tesco indulgent beef pies. Yes, Tesco, the same supermarket that produces those horrific standard steak pies with L-cysteine derived from human hair. But here's the thing. Tesco's indulgent range is completely different. These pies contain 34% beef, which is exactly what their standard range should contain but doesn't. The filling is mostly meat with very little fat. One customer described them as good, which is high praise compared to the usual Tesco pie experience. This proves beyond any doubt that Tesco knows how to make a proper pie. They have the capability, they have the supply chains, they have the recipes, they just choose not to use them for their standard range, because they can save money by selling inferior products to customers who don't read the ingredient labels. The indulgent range exists to capture customers who are willing to pay a bit more for quality. And it works, because the quality difference is substantial. If Tesco applied the same ingredient standards to their standard range that they use for indulgent, British pie quality would improve overnight, but they won't, because the profit margins are better on rubbish. So, if you're shopping at Tesco and need a pie, ignore everything in their standard range and go straight for indulgent. It's the only way to avoid being sold water, pea protein, and hair-derived flour treatment agents. Third, Edwards of Conwy pies. These are award-winning pies made by a proper family butcher in North Wales. They're served in professional catering settings because chefs actually trust them. The meat content is high, the ingredients are simple. There's no palm oil, no modified starch, no MSG, none of the industrial nonsense that's ruined every other pie on this list. Edwards of Conwy represents what British pies should be. Proper meat, proper pastry, made by people who care about their reputation and their product. You're not going to find these in every supermarket. They're more specialist, more regional. But if you can get your hands on them, you're eating a pie that would make your grandfather nod in approval rather than spit it out in disgust. This is the standard the industry should be held to, and the fact that massive corporations with infinitely more resources than a family butcher in North Wales can't match this quality tells you everything about their priorities. The British meat pie didn't have to end up like this. These companies made deliberate choices to cut costs, reformulate recipes, replace real ingredients with cheap substitutes, and hope customers wouldn't notice. Well, we've noticed, and we're done accepting it. Hit that like button one more time. Smash the hype button to push this video to more people who need to see what they're actually buying. Leave me a comment telling me which food product you want me to investigate next, because I'm going to keep making videos like this until these corporations realize we're not going to stay silent while they poison our food system with engineered garbage. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation. Until next time, read your labels, trust your instincts, and protect your plate